The film opens with a prologue delivered by a woman who reflects on the destructive nature of humanity. She expresses that people have effectively ruined their own planet, likening their behavior to that of a massive ship, the Titanic, careening toward an inevitable iceberg. No one seems to care about the impending disaster. Instead, they continue to indulge in their pleasures, oblivious to the consequences. As the ice caps melt and ancient viruses and bacteria, which had lain dormant for millions of years, begin to awaken, the situation becomes dire. By the time people recognize the threat, it is too late to save Earth. In a desperate bid for survival, the authorities exhaust their remaining resources to construct rockets aimed at sending survivors into space. However, there is no clear destination for these journeys, as Earth has become uninhabitable. Those who remain manage to find refuge in the mountains, far from the contaminated zones, but the number of survivors is a mystery. Among them is Ava, a woman who has managed to carve out an existence on a mountain. Eva's only companion is a small military robot named Arthur. After donning her oxygen mask, Eva sets off down a dusty road littered with debris from a bygone civilization. Upon arriving at a decimated supermarket, Eva takes a shopping cart to collect necessities. When the battery of her cart dies unexpectedly, she stumbles upon lavender seeds, which she decides to take with her, hoping they might thrive on the mountain. Before departing, she leaves a note on the wall, spraying the coordinates of her home in case another survivor comes across it. Upon her return, Arthur eagerly awaits her and demands the password for entry. As she unloads her car, she struggles to provide the password repeatedly, which annoys her. In a moment of mischief, she intentionally gives the incorrect password, provoking Arthur to threaten her with his weapon. She sighs, resigned to the fact that he will never fully comprehend human communication, and finally provides the correct password. Inside her home, Eva takes a shower to decontaminate herself before heading to another room to try reaching out to any remaining survivors via her radio. As expected, the airwaves are silent. That evening, she tends to her plants in the greenhouse, jots down snippets of news, repairs broken items, and bounces a ball off the wall to entertain herself. The next morning, as Eva begins to install a solar panel, she suggests playing riddles with Arthur. She presents him with an easy one that he solves effortlessly. In turn, he offers a riddle of his own, and they continue exchanging brain teasers until Eva poses a more challenging one involving 3 robots crossing a desert. The riddle describes a scenario where the last robot sees 2 robots in front of him and 1 behind. However, when she asks Arthur for his interpretation, he counters with a question about the nature of the robots. Frustrated with his rigid understanding, Eva acknowledges that only a human could truly grasp the essence of her riddle and laughs, delighted to have outsmarted him for once. In jest, she proposes that she and Arthur should get married. Arthur responds with a dictionary definition of marriage, firmly stating that such a union between them is impossible. With a hint of bitterness, Eva reflects on her loneliness. She has no one else in the world. She reminisces about how her father constructed their base before leaving for the war, bringing Arthur along from a warehouse. Eva vividly remembers the moment her father departed for the desert, promising to return in just a few days while leaving Arthur behind to protect her. He had entrusted her with the robot, allowing her to give it orders. However, time has passed, and her father never returned, leaving her with only Arthur for companionship. Arthur, confused by her suggestion of marriage, points out that a breakdown in a marital relationship could be troublesome. Eva, however, proposes the idea of swapping him out for a newer model, just as people often do. She insists that everyone is replaceable, and it is only a matter of time before that happens. Still, she acknowledges that replacements do not always work out, and they might very well be the last 2 beings left on Earth. Arthur, limited by his database, can only confirm that the population was 9.5 billion back in 2014-40. Their conversation shifts to the possibility of other survivors still being alive. Ava mentions that she always leaves her contact information on walls around the city, hoping someone will find it. Arthur, perplexed, questions why she bothers, pointing out that if no one is around, who would read it? Ava prompts him to recall the 3 fundamental rules for robots. Arthur dutifully lists them. 1. A robot must not harm a human. 2. A robot must obey all orders of a human unless it contradicts the first law. 3. A robot must protect itself unless it does not conflict with the first 2 laws. However, Eva reminds him that his programming should also include searching for new energy sources. This dialogue serves to illustrate her frustration with his rigid adherence to rules. Arthur explains that he is a patrol robot designed to prevent intruders from entering their space. In his view, an intruder is anyone who does not know the password. Ava recalls that during the climate wars he was stationed at the border, denying entry to anyone simply because they did not know the password. At that time, nations like India faced dire water shortages, with searing temperatures causing untold suffering. People were desperate to escape to safer lands, but the North fortified its borders with thousands of robots, leading to one of the deadliest genocides in human history, people fighting for their very survival. Eventually, Arthur's memory was wiped clean. Ava reflects that had she known the password, she would have reprogrammed him long ago, assigning him new duties rather than this pointless patrol of their isolated existence. If only she could have transformed him into a kitchen robot, he might have been more useful. After finishing the installation of the solar panels, Eva enthusiastically suggests using the electricity to hang some lights in their home, as Christmas is just around the corner. She ponders over what gift she might give Arthur for the holiday season, but the robot reminds her that gifts are meaningless for machines, stating that he wouldn't even know what to do with one. This realization leads Eva to sigh, lamenting that he is merely a hunk of metal devoid of emotions. She pleads with him to at least pretend to be human and accompany her in a more human-like manner. As the sun begins to set, Arthur finds Eva and expresses a desire for a new eye as his holiday present. Eva promises to look into it after she finishes decorating the Christmas tree. Arthur then recalls the riddle about the 3 robots and asks Eva to reveal the answer. However, Eva refuses, explaining that the purpose of riddles is to provoke thought. This leaves an intriguing question hanging in the air: can a robot truly think? That evening, Eva goes about her necessary chores, grabbing something from the fridge. In the process, her eyes catch a glimpse of a notebook on the fridge labeled Codebook, which seems significant. She pulls out a box of Christmas decorations to begin adorning their home for the festive season. The following morning, Eva informs Arthur that she is heading out to find an artificial Christmas tree, as there are no living trees left. As always, Arthur warns her of the dangers that await her outside. He instructs her to wear her protective suit, take a spare oxygen tank, and under no circumstances should she drink any water while outside. After gathering her gear, Eva returns to the house to retrieve something, but Arthur blocks her path, demanding the password for entry. Automatically, she recites the old password, but Arthur refuses to let her in, explaining that a new password has been implemented, which changes every 3 months. Eva remembers that the new password is documented in the codebook on the fridge, yet she cannot access it without entering the house, and Arthur remains steadfast in his refusal. Attempting to assert her authority, she orders him to let her in, but Arthur insists he cannot act without the password. In a tense moment, he even readies his weapon, prompting Eva to step back. Desperately, she tries every word that comes to mind, but how could she possibly guess one specific password among countless possibilities? She attempts to negotiate with the robot, reminding him that she is the only person left. Most likely, she is indeed the last human on Earth, having outlived everyone else, continuously fighting for survival. She questions whether she will truly meet her end here, outside her own home, simply because she cannot recall the password. Eva continues to attempt to walk past Arthur, but he raises his weapon in a clear warning. It dawns on her that he is not bluffing. Realizing she needs to come up with a new plan, she steps aside and quickly assesses her surroundings. Understanding that the robot's patrol area is confined, she devises a strategy to approach him without being detected. After some time, Eva pretends to return from her quest for a Christmas tree and approaches Arthur again, acting as if nothing is amiss. She claims she forgot to bring an axe to chop down a tree for their Christmas celebration. When he asks for the password, she cleverly replies that she will provide it once she is inside the base. Unexpectedly, Arthur reminds her that there are no living trees anymore, questioning why she would need an axe. Once again, Eva attempts to persuade the robot to grant her access. He knows her well, after all. Although he confirms that he recognizes her, he insists that he cannot allow her entry without the password. Eva proposes that he let her in just for a moment to glance at the password, assuring him that everything will be fine, and if she utters the wrong word, he can terminate her. However, Arthur takes his time to answer and ultimately states that he cannot do that because his primary function is to protect humans. In this scenario, the only person he can harm is a stranger, an intruder, meaning anyone who does not know the password. He clarifies that the difference between Eva and an intruder is that she knows the password while the intruder does not. Faced with a dead end, she reluctantly backs away. Spending the night outside, Eva occasionally throws small stones at the robot, but he remains steadfast at his post. When morning breaks, she flips her clothes inside out, covers her face, and approaches Arthur, attempting to pass herself off as a refugee in search of asylum. She recalls that under Article 14 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, every individual has the right to seek asylum from persecution. Arthur agrees to discuss her situation once she returns from behind the generator. Eva steps away and shortly reappears, looking like her usual self. Arthur informs her that a stranger had approached the day before, throwing stones at him during the night, and mentions that a refugee has just arrived. Eva instructs him to offer water to the refugee should they return. Eva then moves out of sight, changes her attire, and returns as the refugee. She requests water, but Arthur begins to question her to determine whether she is a political or climate refugee. Eva claims she is a political refugee, emphasizing that climate refugees possess no rights. However, the robot demands proof of her persecution in her homeland. She reminds him that the Geneva Convention states that no evidence is required to prove such claims. Still, Arthur insists that a refugee must articulate why it became dangerous for them to remain in their country, requesting an explanation before he can provide her with water. Adapting to her role as the refugee, Eva explains that she fled from a war zone where her home was burned, her relatives were killed, and she was even shot at. While the robot considers this sufficient, he still insists on seeing documentation to validate her claims. Frustrated, Eva questions what kind of documents a war refugee could possibly possess. Arthur continues to recite procedural steps, insisting she must file an application with the border service and similar protocols. Losing her patience, she simply asks for water. Arthur responds that he will only provide her with water after he has given it to Eva, who is already dehydrated and in danger of dying. That night, Eva spends another night by the generator. In the morning, she tries once more to pass by, but upon spotting Arthur on duty, she gives up. He questions her certainty that no other humans remain on Earth, wondering where the stranger and the refugee came from. However, Eva is too exhausted to argue with the machine. Arthur mentions a nearby station that has been operational for a century, suggesting that someone must maintain it. Eva assumes that only mindless robots could be in charge there. Arthur refuses to bring anything off the base, and in a twisted turn of events meant to protect her, he ultimately decides to end her life. Gazing toward the distant station, Eva is convinced it is just another mindless machine, stuck with its finger hovering over the shutdown key, halted only by a request for confirmation that it is not a robot. Desperate, she searches her vehicle for water, but finds none. Instead, she discovers the lavender seeds she had collected earlier. Determined, she plants them near the car and pleads for them to sprout. Then she proposes a deal to Arthur. If he allows her access to the base, she will reveal the answer to the riddle about the three robots. Arthur, however, is not swayed and informs her that he is programmed to resist any form of manipulation. Humble yet desperate, Eva begs for water in exchange for the answer, but the robot remains silent. With no other option, she decides to head toward the distant station in the city, despite her oxygen levels dwindling to a mere 18% in her suit. Eva soon embarks on her journey to the facility. The landscape surrounding her is barren and desolate, a stark reminder of the world that once was. The control panel within the facility still flickers with blinking lights, a haunting indication that some remnants of technology remain operational amid the decay. As she begins to search the area, her heart sinks as she realizes that nothing useful can be found in the ruins. She soon encounters a locked door, beyond which she can see bottles, perhaps a source of water or oxygen, that could save her life. Just as she spots them and takes an axe to smash the small window of the locked door. With all her might, she forces her way inside, only to be met with the disheartening sight of a base that has long since abandoned its purpose of protection. Disappointment and frustration wash over her. She resumes her search through the empty base, her ears catching the faint sound of dripping water. However, it quickly becomes apparent that her efforts are in vain. The water is only dripping slowly, drop by drop, and she realizes that the chances of finding anything substantial are slim. With a heavy heart, she decides that returning to the mountain is her only option. As she navigates back toward the mountain in her vehicle, her eyes catch sight of Arthur in the distance. Fueled by anger and desperation, she accelerates brutally toward him, planning to jump out of the front seat just in time to ram into him and finish him off. But before she can execute her plan, Arthur fires directly at her vehicle's window, causing a tremendous explosion that sends her hurtling out of the car and inflicting serious injuries upon her. The following day, Eva awakens, her body covered in severe wounds. Pain radiates through her, and she struggles to stand due to crippling hunger and dehydration. Soon, Arthur arrives on the scene and informs her that an intruder attempted to breach the base using her vehicle, but he successfully thwarted the attempt. Eva, fighting through her pain, asks where this intruder is now. Arthur reveals that the intruder is hiding with a refugee behind the generator. Intrigued yet wary, she then poses a provocative question. If she had been the one trying to ram him, would he have killed her? Arthur replies confidently, stating that he never makes mistakes. Before long, the toll of her injuries and dehydration causes Eva to faint. When she regains consciousness, her vision is blurry and she sees Arthur's figure looming nearby. He recognizes her but coldly states that he will only provide her with water once she gives him the new password. At this point, she can barely speak. She calls out his name, pleading for water. As another day drags on, Eva awakens to find droplets of water landing softly on her face. Arthur watches her breakdown, but he remains helpless, bound by his programmed logic that prevents him from offering any assistance. In the depths of her despair, Eva finally admits that she once dreamed of getting married. She asks Arthur if he would have given her water if she had been his partner. He responds affirmatively, but adds a grim twist. Time passes, and as evening approaches, we find Eva in her final hours. She struggles to breathe, her body weak and frail, and begins to drift into visions of a happier time. Just as she starts to fade into unconsciousness, Arthur interrupts her fading thoughts, eager to ask her one crucial question before she departs this world. Eva senses that this must be an important inquiry if he is bringing it up now. Arthur poses his question, asking how the riddle of the three robots concludes. Hearing this, Eva somehow manages to muster the strength to crawl painfully toward him, determined to answer. After losing track of time, she slowly regains her senses and sighs, "Not yet, I have to beat this machine." With her strength waning, Eva musters a final request. She asks Arthur to water her seeds so they can grow. As her life slips away, she takes her final breath and finishes her statement, "To water my lavender." And with that, the movie ends. We hope you enjoyed our recap. Like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing recaps. See you in the next one.